Welcome to the backseat. It is great to be back. I am your host, Ethan, and I am joined again by my co-host.
Again, always ready to give you some absolutely terrible takes, but that's my job, and I'm here for you.
Yeah, so it's good to be back. So Clark, how are you doing? How have you been since our first episode? Now that we're sophomores, basically in the podcasting
they always
realm.
Talk about in the NFL a sophomore slump. I guess if this is number 2, we look to avoid that sophomore slump. Hopefully, it's a little bit better than our first production, but a lot of confidence in us. I feel good about us in this. We're wearing the same colored shirt, kind of. We didn't really plan that, but we're here. Yeah. So that's a lot of good energy going into the second episode for sure.
Hey, it's basically the uniform. We basically got it figured out.
Accidental twins, always a good sign for a show.
Yeah, I mean, we went back and watched the game tape, posted some of it on TikTok.
Check it out, by the way.
And now we're back for our second episode. Already have learned a lot.
Without a doubt, exponentially.
So, getting into our first story of the day, our first big topic is the NFL. So we're going over to the NFL, and we're talking about this draft that just happened. So we just had this huge 3-day long draft of all these prospects, which people said was super deep. What others said, the top wasn't great. So we're going to talk about some offensive rookie of the year hype, some defensive rookie of the year hype, and that's where we're going to live in today's episode. So let's start off with Clark. Who do you think is going to win offensive rookie of the year? And we're also going to get some betting.
No,
thoughts.
You're good.
Sorry,
so the first guy actually that I had put down is the top guy which I would put money on. Probably will surprise a lot of people, especially those who decided to lose their minds after one day of training, rookie minicamp, I should say. I have my favorite actually as Treylin Burks. I think Treylin Burks for the Tennessee Titans, I would say, has the best chance in my mind, purely because I think he's going to be the main option in that offense in terms of throwing the ball if he plays his card right and has a good offseason. He also has, of the rookie receivers, probably the most established quarterback. I mean, Tannehill is, for his liabilities, has had good years in the past with throwing the ball. A.J. Brown had success there when he was a young receiver. Obviously, he's in Philadelphia now. But I think Burks and Brown have a lot of similar qualities, good after the catch, big physical receivers. I think if they can get that chemistry down, Burks is a guy who I would certainly be willing to put some money on at plus 750 right now to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Whether that happens or not, who knows, but I kind of like it. What about you? Who you guys your top guy?
Well, so before I talk about who I like, I want to ask you, so is he who you would pick to actually win the award?
I would pick him as my rookie of the year. Not only is I think the value just in terms of a bet there, I think he would be my pick just based off of the fact that I think he is going to get a lot of opportunities to be the main pass catcher for the Titans. And like I said, I think he probably has the most established guy throwing him the ball. And because of that combination, I feel like he's a guy who I could seriously see doing some damage this year, especially with wide receivers the way that they've broken in the last years. I'm not saying he's the same capability of guys like Chase and Jefferson, who I think are both top 5. But I think Treylin Burks, the way that he molds out and the way that Tennessee kind of likes to run their offense in terms of passing the ball, he's someone who I think can pick up a good season and have good numbers. So I think, he's definitely my favorite for the guy coming out.
Okay, cool. So my pick. So I broke down my Rookie of the Year thoughts into 3 categories. So I got my favorite. So if I were just picking off of who I think is going to win, that is my first one. My second one is my value bet pick. So if I were to actually put money, this is who I'd put money on to win. Who I think I'd make the best bet about. And then my third one is just a crazy pick. Somebody who I think has insane value that I could see in a hypothetical world winning, and you'd win a lot of money if they did, but they're nowhere near the favorite. So my top guy, it's kind of simple. If we're playing smart money, it's got to be Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is going to be the starter in Pittsburgh. He's going to be starting with a already established receiving core. He's got Najee Harris. They've got a average defense, as we talked about last episode. I mean, they play in a tough division, but Kenny Pickett's going to be enough to stack numbers. I'm going to think about him as Mac Jones this year. I think Mac Jones will end up being better than Kenny Pickett, but I think in terms of rookie numbers, I think they'll probably line up pretty close to one another. And Mac Jones was second in Rookie of the Year voting. What it took to take the award away from him was an insane performance by Jamar Chase. And if Jamar Chase didn't play that first Chiefs game, who even knows if he would have won the award? So my clear pick right now is Kenny Pickett.
Maybe I didn't pick him just a little bit of a spite for myself, but that's a very good pick. I think he definitely has an opportunity to put up some numbers this year for Pittsburgh. We'll leave it at that.
Well, the other thing I just put into it is, quarterbacks just get a bias in any of these awards. They're the leaders of the team, so it just feels like the clear one. He's the only real quarterback who's going to start from day one out of these groups.
So then, let me ask you this. Then obviously, Pickett's your top guy. Who would be your number 2 then? If you were putting a bet on someone that you like the value at.
So my value pick is Garrett Wilson at plus 900. So Garrett Wilson is behind a couple of these rookie wide receivers. He's behind Treylin Burks and Drake London, which I personally like Garrett Wilson coming up the best out of all of these receivers as it was. And I think Garrett Wilson fits nicely into this Jets offense, which is bound to take a step forward this year just because of the amount of talent they put on the field. So I just think Garrett Wilson could put up big numbers. I don't think he's going to have a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase year, but I think he could stack together a lot of really good games, especially because your argument with Treylin Burks that he's going to really be the only receiving weapon on that team. The Jets have many weapons, and so the pressure is going to be off him a little bit. So he can kind of just play. He's the clear number 1. He's got Corey Davis and Elijah Moore there to benefit for him. And I just think he could play really, really well, especially in a Shanahan type
It's funny
offense.
enough, that's your value pick. My value pick is a guy who lined up left side of him at Ohio State, that being Chris Olave. I think Chris Olave at plus 1,000 right now, very enticing. I think when I look at Olave, he was probably one of my favorite receivers coming out of the draft this year. I think he had not only the ability to go deep and be a deep threat as he was at Ohio State, but I really like what he does with the ball in his hands. He's someone I think can make guys miss in the open field. And I think, although when Winston played last year, he wasn't nearly as aggressive as he was in Tampa Bay, but that's what happens when you go for a 30-30 season, which this isn't baseball, so it's not what you want. But Jameis is a guy who likes to throw the ball. He likes to make opportunities happen. He likes to take chances. I think Olave, if he assimilates into that offense, which I think he will very well. He's a really good receiver. I'm also a little bit biased because he's a San Diego guy. So, but I think at plus 1,000, Olave, he's one of those guys with the talent with, I think, again, a little bit more of an established quarterback, a little bit more of an established team. I understand he probably is on the lower end of the depth chart right now with Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas. Not only that, but they have Alvin Kamara in the backfield who takes up a lot of targets. But I think at plus 1,000, it's a pretty solid value in my mind. And I think Olave has a chance to make some waves out there for New Orleans if he plays well. So, but now going to the way out there ones, which are always a ton of fun. Who do you have for your guy for Offensive Rookie of the Year? Way out there.
So my way out there kind of guy is really surprising. So it's Trey McBride now with the Arizona Cardinals. So he's at plus 5,000. And the reason I picked him is just because of without DeAndre Hopkins, they're going to have a lot of targets that they're going to need to fill out in Arizona. Without DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 games, and now they don't have Christian Kirk anymore. Andy Isabella has never really felt into that offense. Kyler Murray's going to have to put the target somewhere, and Trey McBride was pretty much the clear-cut number 1 tight end in this draft. And I think he could put up big red zone numbers that could prop him up into this Rookie of the Year bet. Like, if he ends with 10 to 12 touchdowns and with about 800 yards receiving, I think you could start making the argument that a tight end is in this group, especially if these wide receivers are kind of killing themselves up at the top and Kenny Pickett just hasn't impressed. I think we could be making an argument a tight end might need to win the
interesting.
award.
I feel like people have kind of soured on tight ends, but there wasn't one. He was the top one, so I like that. My long shot pick, I did go with the quarterback. It is not Pickett, though, because obviously his odds are way too good. I went with plus 1,400. I went with Desmond Ridder. I think Desmond Ridder has a really good chance to supplant Marcus Mariota as the starting quarterback for the Falcons. I mean, it's aggressive to say this, but I think he could do it within the first 5 weeks. If Mariota does not play very well, I don't think there's really any reason for Atlanta to stick on him. And for the talent that I think Ritter has, and I think his awareness in the pocket, I think coming out, mechanics-wise, he was probably the most sound guy of the group. And I think he has the athleticism that goes with it, that people kind of undersold on him in the draft, that I think, you know, he would have some chances to make some plays. Again, Atlanta's a very bad team, but if you're a quarterback, there can be a bright spot on it. Maybe he helps them win some more games than people thought. I mean, again, he'd have to probably play better than a guy like Pickett to win the award, because, again, if it's quarterback's favored, if Pickett plays well, he's going to have to outplay him. But when I look at Ritter with the athleticism combined with, I think, some refined mechanics that people don't as much give him credit for, I think he's really enticing at plus 1,400. I think he's a guy who definitely could make a sneaky run if he gets in there and takes Mariota's spot.
So I like that pick, but there are two concerns I have about Ritter. First is, when is he going to play over Marcus Mariota? Because I don't think he's going to be day one starter. So, and then my second thing is, those Falcons receivers are not good. I mean, Drake London is a good player, but he's still a rookie. And then outside of that, they got about nothing. They have some guys.
I think there's enough there that the offense could be something if they're able to scheme it correctly. I don't have much faith in that. But I think if London pans out well, you could have a very nice connection between him and London. And, you know, people might say that, oh, well, if Drake London's playing so well, then why not take a bet on him? And I think the answer to that is simply is that, okay, the quarterback's going to ultimately get more credit than anything else. That's what's going to end up happening.
Yeah.
I think, totally again, right. I don't know when Ritter is going to start. I guess with this bet, I would be banking on him, you know, getting in sooner rather than later. But I think there is a very real opportunity where he sees the field quickly if Mariota struggles. Because truthfully be told, you know what Mariota is at this point in his career. I mean, this is his second shot for him. But I don't think there's anyone looking at Mariota right now like, oh, this could be our franchise guy. I think it's why he only got 2 years, $18 million with Atlanta. It's just kind of a stopgap.
No, I don't even know if teams are looking at him as a stopgap at this point. I mean, there were plenty of teams that need a stopgap that didn't sign him.
But who knows? Ritter, I love Ritter. I think Ritter's a solid choice for it. So, again, I'm on.
Yeah, okay, that's a good pick. So, now we're going to move over to the defense. And so, we got these defensive players, and the defense started, first 5 picks of the draft were all defensive players of the year. So, I got to ask, is your top guy, was he one of those top 5 picks?
Yes, he was. I think it was top 5. I could be wrong, mistaking the number now, getting it switched up. But I have my top guy is Kayvon Thibodeau. Number 5, yeah. So I thought he was 5 or 6. But yes, Kayvon Thibodeau is my top guy. I know people, when he came out of college, which I always thought was a rather somewhat silly thing, that they were like, oh, well, the motor question, I don't know if he's really going to be all that into it. And I was like, okay, it just feels like the quintessential lazy analysis of a guy just because maybe he took some plays off at Oregon. But I think when you look at the build and when he really is, when you turn on the tape and he's in, you know, a meaningful game where he's really playing that high motor, not, I think, a rusher that was in this draft that's more gifted than him. I mean, Hutchinson was another guy I was very tempted with. I believe he had the lowest of everyone. I think him and Thibodeau had the same value at plus 450.
Yeah, they're both at plus 500.
Thibodeau, the reason it kind of entices me is just the higher ceiling. I think you can make the argument, okay, Hutchinson, take him because he's got the lower floor. You expect you kind of know what you're going to get with his production. But I think Thibodeau is one of those guys where it's okay, you know, if he gets a sack or two early, he's going to start feeling it quick and he's going to get going. I think for that reason, that's kind of why I lean towards him. But what about you? Yes, he looked great.
I picked the same guy. My top was Thibodeau. And the reason I picked Thibodeau was a little bit different than you, but I picked Thibodeau because I just think on the Giants, with that defensive line and the way the defense played last year, I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities to rush the passer. They brought in Mondale from the Ravens, who is going to rush a lot and is going to bring a lot of pressure. Thibodeau is going to get free rushes at the quarterback, which is scary. I mean, I think Thibodeau is going to rack up sacks. I don't know how his pressure numbers are going to be in year one. I think Thibodeau is going to be a really, really good player, to tell you the truth. I think Thibodeau was a 1A, 1B to Hutchinson. I think Thibodeau likely has the higher ceiling, but Hutchinson has a little bit higher of a floor, and I don't think you could have really gone wrong with either of them. I just think right now, as it is in year one, I think Thibodeau's going to be able to rack up those sack numbers a little bit more than Hutchinson just because of the pieces on the Giants defense opposed to those on the Lions
without a doubt.
defense.
I think another thing, too, that might help him just in terms of the voting getting at the end of the year is that if, say, it's between him and Hutchinson, one guy plays in Detroit, one guy plays in New York. One team's going to get watched more, one guy's going to get way more attention. That's going to be Thibodeau. Whether that's fair or not, that's the reality of the situation. And that can be a double-edged sword. Say, he doesn't play well everyone's going to know because he's in New York. But if he does play well, everyone's going to know about it, and his name's going to be way more out there. So,
yeah, I mean, I think Thibodeau. I mean, and the dude's just
he's an
so
athletic
fast, and he can just move around the edge.
I like him
nice.
a ton. I didn't really give a rat's ass about the concerns out of college. I mean, I guess you got to take it with a grain of salt, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to step up to it.
Well, so it felt very much like how people treated Joey Bosa when he was coming out in 2016, where Joey Bosa had been the top prospect for like 2 years up to that point. Thibodeau has been the guy of this class for the last 2 years. Everyone had mocked him at number one at the beginning of next year. He was in the top 5. And so people just learned to overanalyze him. They try to find the things wrong because there was so much right for so long. I mean, we had a great example of this is the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers talked about how Justin Herbert was number one on their board after 2019. And then they get to the 2020 draft and are ready to take Tua before Herbert if he was on the board. That whole year they decided that there was a quarterback better than him, even though there really wasn't. So, moving past that, who is your second
my value
person?
guy was probably maybe my favorite defensive prospect coming out. I was surprised he was the second corner taken. I think my guy, my second choice at plus 900, Ahmad Sauce Gardner. I love Ahmad Sauce Gardner. And I know what you're saying probably yourself right now. Why would you bet on a rookie corner? Rookie corner is notoriously the guys that get picked on the most. They struggle most with the transition. But I think for me, I think Gardner's going to be out on the field a lot. He's going to be lining up against number ones a lot. He's going to have the opportunity to prove, that his 0 receiving touchdowns allowed in college wasn't some sort of fluke. I'm sure he's not going to have some sort of pedigree like that his first year. But I do think his playing coverage, if he's allowed to play man, and he's going to be able to excel in my mind. I think Gardner's a guy who I really like. I like his length. I like his speed. I like his ability to track the ball. He's a guy that entices me. Don't watch his tackling. He's a really bad tackler. But fortunately, he plays corner, so it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is every college corner is
Don't think there's ever
tackler.
one that was like, oh, this guy's a stout guy coming out of the secondary. So, yeah, Gardner at plus 900. I think he was the best cornerback prospect coming out. I understand why people took Stingley, but my guy's Gardner at plus 900 for some solid value. What about you, though?
Okay. That's interesting. I would not touch a
I
corner,
think it's enticing.
but
I feel like
I like the thought. They have such bad conversions.
But maybe I'm just a little bit subdued by the...
Especially without the return ability, because the reason Patrick Peterson got so
originally
famous his
for the
rookie
returns,
years because he is returning. So my pick is really far out there. And this is who I ultimately think might win the award, which is going to be surprising to you. My pick is Dax Hill at 3,300.
Dax Hill. Okay.
So I think Dax Hill, the reason I'm betting on Dax Hill is because if there is still the holdout, I think the safety room is wide open for the Bengals. I think Dax Hill will step in and be able to play a box safety and be able to move around that Bengals defense already in a pretty established secondary. I think he will be able to make plays on the ball. He'll be able to rack up stats. And I think he'll be able to be that movable piece. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a top 5 safety by the end of the year, but I think he's going to be a really good player. And he's probably the reason that a holdout is happening. I think
part of it.
Right now, that safety room is kind of wide open. And so I think Dax Hill could really take that starting role, and I think he could really rack up stats to be able to win defensive.
No, I mean, again, as a Bengals fan, I love the Daxton Hill pick. I think he's a very talented player. He's very versatile. He's a guy that can move around, not just being the safety, but come down to the box. He can play out, at the slot position probably if you need him to. For me, I would still love Jesse Bates, obviously, over him because I'm a huge Jesse Bates guy, but... No, I think that makes a lot of sense. If Daxton Hill starts week 1, I think you're right. He will have the opportunity to rack up stats. He'll have a good counterpart with him in the back end with Von Bell. And, I think that would make sense at that value right there. I like it.
I will say, though, the other player I was really close to taking was Jermaine Johnson. But I didn't want to pick two Jets. I don't think both rookies of the years would be Jets. But I think Jermaine Johnson could do really well, especially with Carl Lawson on the other side and that interior defensive line. I think he could also rack up stats. So I tried to pick something a little bit different because I don't think a linebacker is going to win it this year, and I don't think a corner is going to win it. I mean, my best guess for a corner would be Kaiir Elam, actually, just because he gets a lot of pressure taken off him, and he'll be on twos. And so it's not going to be the kind of pressure Stingley.
Well, that was another thing, too. One of the guys I looked at was, Kyler Gordon, their guy from Kansas City. I think he has a chance to be on the field, but I don't think he's going to be the guy that gets looked at the most.
I don't think Kyler Gordon didn't get drafted by Kansas City.
Trent McDuffie. Who did Kyler Gordon go to, then?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
No, he did go to the Bears. He go to the Bears. Yeah. Either way, I like Kyler Gordon.
Went to the Bears.
But yes, he was one of those guys I've thought about. But yeah, Trent McDuffie was the guy that went to Kansas City.
Did you have a long shot pick?
A very long shot
Was there
pick.
anyone?
Probably won't happen, but he's a guy that I fell in love with the draft process. I think he was probably, again, one of my favorite prospects. I really, in some ways, even though I'm not a Chargers fan as much, obviously, I was hoping that they would have a chance at him. I think Jordan Davis is a D-tackle. Again, I know he's a D-tackle, but I think when you look at Jordan Davis, he's arguably one of the most disruptive players that there is out of this draft class from a pure standpoint of the defensive line. Again, I don't know how much he's going to be on the field. I don't know how much he's going to really offer in terms of pass rush. But as a guy who would just rack up tackle numbers, be disruptive, be someone you could look at maybe more with advanced metrics being looked in, he'll look more valuable. So I think from that standpoint, at plus 1,400, I do like Jordan Davis. Again, he's playing in Philadelphia. That's a big market. He'll get looked at a lot. He'll get attention if he's playing well. But I think Davis, from a physicality standpoint, what he could bring to that defense and what he could do for that team, I think he's someone that's worth maybe taking a look at. Again, I get it. He's a D-tackle. He's not going to put up the sexy numbers that are sacks and whatnot, but he's still someone who I would consider.
Yeah, I know. That's an interesting one. So mine is a lot more long shot. So my long shot comes from Denver Broncos, and it is Nick Bonito.
Really?
So Nick Bonito is currently at 6,600 odds. And the reason I picked Nick Bonito is because he had the best bend of any edge rusher in this draft. The way he is able to move around offensive tackles allows him to be a very interesting situational pass rusher in year one. So he's not going to be able to rack up the stats. But again, I'm just picking a super long shot of, hey, you want to try to make a lot of money off something in a crazy parlay? This is the kind of player. Because he might be able to be a 10-sack guy, because he's going to be your third dude, and he's going to be able to run around. He's maybe one of the fastest edge rushers in this class, and he's going to be able to bend around the edge and get past a lot of these offensive tackles and get to the quarterback.
You pick a Big 12 defensive player. Those guys usually suck, typically.
Hey, sometimes you just got to pick
like
edge
it. He
for
does have a lot
the
of
traits
physical
there.
tools.
And
Denver,
Denver, I mean, in a Vic Fangio defense. I mean, I guess I don't actually know if they're still
probably
running
not
Vic
using
Fangio.
anymore. He's gone.
But I think they brought in a Fangio
guy.
guy.
I mean, I could see it. Denver always seems to have, at least for the last, almost decade now, if not more, seem to have a pretty dang good defense. So,
I mean, Shaq Barrett was their third pass rusher.
Pretty dang good. So yeah, I like it. That's definitely a long shot, but it's definitely an interesting one. I could see it happening if he gets in there.
Yeah, so that's my long shot. So our next topic.
Yeah,
Clark,
so
this one is all you.
This is a little bit different. We're going to transitioning to Major League Baseball. A conversation that occurred over this weekend for those who immerse themselves in Major League Baseball. You may have seen it. The lowly Baltimore Orioles brought up their top prospect, and the Major League top prospect, Adley Rutschman. Huge excitement for them. Great for the fans of Baltimore. They deserve something to start to cheer about a little bit more. The team's playing a little bit better than I thought they would. But the commotion that got brought up about Adley Rutschman was that he was wearing number 35. And some people were a little bit befuddled and some upset that he was wearing 35, considering Hall of Fame Oriole pitcher Mike Mussina wore number 35. And that's kind of started the conversation, at least in my head, of like, okay, is it really something for Orioles fans to be upset about? Does it really matter? And, if it really was an issue to begin with, should they have just retired Musina's number in the first place to make sure that no one could allow it? Just because, there hasn't been an Oriole in a long time that's been in the Hall, as far as my recount, and Musina's a pretty big name. So I guess my question to you is that, one topic I kind of want to talk about was just numbers that aren't retired that maybe should be, like a guy like Musina. So did you think of any guys you're like, oh, why isn't that number retired? I just think it kind of crossed my mind listening to that conversation.
Yeah, so I compiled a list of, I got about 10 guys. 10. So I strictly kept to the NFL. So I got about 10 guys in the NFL that I think the numbers probably should be retired, or at least thought about, which I haven't seen people talk about recently. The most surprising to me, of course, is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals probably have the best offensive lineman to ever play the game, Anthony Munoz, who does not have their number
not retired. You're right.
So another one is Ken Anderson, who probably also should have his number retired as a Cincinnati Bengals.
There's a number of Cincinnati
Bengals
you could probably say this for. I think you're probably going to say a third one.
And then my last. I got one more. And then my last is Riley. I don't even get how he's not in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. I don't even get how Ken Riley is not in the Hall of Fame. I don't get how his number is not retired. So those were my Bengal ones. I felt like I had to say those just because
there's one guy I'm surprised you left off, too.
Who are you?
No, I was going to say Chad Johnson.
Oh, I was thinking about Chad Johnson, but I actually don't know in the grand scheme. Like, as a Bengal, he probably should have his number retired, but in the grand scheme of the NFL, he's not really even
I agree. I just think from a franchise perspective, those guys you named, I think Chad would be one of those dudes. So, but yeah, I like those.
So one of mine, I picked two Chargers who probably should get their numbers retired, and one is probably the Chad Ochocinco equivalent, which is Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers should probably get number 17 retired. I mean, Justin Herbert might turn out to be the best Chargers quarterback of all time, but right now that title belongs to Rivers.
Over Fouts?
And then the other one is Antonio Gates. I mean, I think Rivers is better than Fouts. Yeah, but my other one is Antonio Gates. Antonio Gates revolutionized the tight end position to the receiving threat it is today. He probably deserves... I mean, he holds the current tight end touchdown record. He probably deserves his number retired. But so the most interesting one, which might be the biggest talking point, and this is the one I would nail down as the most interesting, is with the Colts. Marvin Harrison's number is not retired.
88.
Which Marvin Harrison is probably one of the best receivers to ever play the game. And so if I were to pick anyone right now, I would say Marvin Harrison probably deserves his number to be retired.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think those are all good ones. I think those are definitely all guys that certainly when you look at their careers for what they did their respective franchises are guys I'm surprised would not already have it retired. But since you named off a lot of football ones, the ones that I'll name, I'll just keep it to the three that I had. Again, some of these guys are more recently retired, but still I'm kind of surprised that numbers haven't been put up in the rafters already. Top guy that came to mind, Ray Lewis. I know it's an off-limit number for the Ravens. No one's worn 52 since he's retired. It's the same way it is with Ed Reed. No one's worn 20. But I'm kind of surprised they haven't decided to call it like, hey, put it up there at M&T Bank Stadium, make sure everyone knows, because he, for my money, is the best Ravens defender I've ever watched play. I know Ed Reed was great, but Ray Lewis is one of those guys that was like, all right, you're not coming over the middle. And he was the heart and soul of that defense, I think. Another guy which, again, recently retired, and I don't know if this has to do with any sort of way that the contract played out and him retiring, but Calvin Johnson.
Calvin Johnson. Same guy. Yeah, I
think
him
Calvin Johnson's a guy, it's like, arguably, I think in my mind, a top 3, top 5 receiver of all time, and easily behind Barry Sanders, the second best player in Lions history, I think. When you look at what he did in his prime, ungodly numbers. And it was just one of those dudes, it was like, you could put it up in triple coverage. You actually feel relatively confident that he's going to come down with it over those guys. I think just when you look what he did for the Lions, he stuck it out for as long as he could. And I don't know if it's a matter of how things ended for some reason. The Lions like, no, we're not going to do this. But certainly a guy who I would say is extremely deserving of it. And then...
Yeah, he was on my list. I'm exactly
Yeah,
the same
and then
wavelength as
the
you.
last guy that I had for the NFL is someone whom which I briefly, I think at least for the Bengals itself, I think Chad Johnson. I think for me as a Bengals fan, you can make a really good argument that in the early 2000s, besides the 2005 season when they made the playoffs and they got more relevant, Chad was really the only reason you turned on the TV for the Bengals. There was not a lot for that franchise to be happy about. He stayed around for a long time. He had a number of all-pro years. He was a 1,000-yard receiver, basically boxed it in for about almost a decade for the Bengals. And I think just for this franchise itself, he's so iconic to it. I mean, with the celebrations, just the character and the personality he was, combined with really good play, it just kind of makes sense that I think the Bengals should retire him. And again, you could go down the list with the numbers for Cincinnati. They don't have a single one. I mean, Ken Anderson, Ken Riley, Anthony Munoz, Boomer Esiason, the list goes on. But Chad's the guy that jumps out the most to me.
Yeah.
And then on a different subject, I went to baseball, picked out 3 numbers that I thought. I'm kind of surprised. First one, and I think I know why, because it's kind of tainted, but 25 in San Francisco, Barry Bonds is not retired. You can still wear 25.
Not a Hall of
And
Famer.
I get it. Again, I'm a guy who thinks Barry Bonds belongs in the Hall of Fame. I do. And I can't believe that 25 isn't retired, because I think when you look at the San Francisco Giants, even though he didn't spend his whole career there with being in the Pirates beforehand, Bonds is one of the most synonymous Giants and probably one of the most historic Giants. I mean, he has the most historic home run you could argue in Major League history, going for 756 to beat Hank Aaron. But I'm surprised he's not up there. Another guy who's not retired, who again is so big for his organization, Fernando Valenzuela for the Dodgers. Number 34 is not retired. That number is still, I don't know if it's a thing where it's just like you just don't wear it because you know, but Fernando Mania was a real thing. Probably one of the top pitchers in the Dodgers organization ever, and one of the best pitchers you can make an argument in baseball history. He's a guy who I definitely think about. And the last guy I had on my list, a little bit different, but I think could be a really good guy to retire, goes back a long way. I think the Cleveland Guardians should retire number 29, Satchel Paige's number. I think that is a guy who was when he was playing back in the day, granted, a long time ago, one of the most electric pitchers that was on the mound. Threw hard, had great stuff, and was also, just culturally wise, very influential in terms of breaking in as being one of the first African-American players to play baseball. And second of all, I think for Cleveland and just for baseball in general, if he's not the most synonymous name with the sport, but if you were to go to a Cleveland game and you had a kid and he's like, oh, who's that? To be able to tell the story of Satchel Paige and how important he was, I think would be a cool thing for Cleveland to have and a little mark for them to be. So I would say Satchel Paige 29 would be a good number to have.
Those are all really good ones.
That was,
Barry Bonds is an interesting one because not a Hall of Famer and has now lost his
which is
eligibility.
a shame. And again, I wrote about this briefly in a little blog on my own, but the thing with Bonds is I get it. Steroids, he did them. You can call him a cheater, but I think it was a part of the sport at the time, and you can't really tell the story of baseball without including its most prolific home run hitter, Barry Bonds. I mean, I feel like he's got to be there. But I think the reason his number's not retired is because of the steroid stuff.
Yeah, I think those are great. So what I want to do before we transition into our next one is I want to rapid fire off the ones that I did not say, and to tell you the truth, they're all
Really?
Denver Broncos. So I have 3 Denver Broncos I did not say. So one that I thought of was Peyton Manning. I'm surprised his number isn't retired in Denver.
Okay.
Just because of his Super Bowl victory and all of the records he holds in Denver.
A short time
and
there,
because
I feel
now...
like.
I know, but he's going to become an owner of the team, it feels like. He's in all of their promo materials. It honestly feels like post his career, he's more of a Denver Bronco than he was an Indianapolis Colt, as weird as it is.
I guess maybe it's
I
true.
feel like he spends more time with that organization.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you're... I mean, he did do a ton. I just don't know if he'd be a guy, if I was the Broncos, I'd retire the number.
Why wouldn't you retire the number?
It's maybe a stupid argument. I know he did a lot there, but just the length of time. He wasn't there 10 years. He wasn't there a decade. I know he won a Super Bowl, but it's like, okay, did the Buccaneers retire Tom Brady's number when he retires?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Peyton was there 5 seasons. I mean, it feels like he was there less, but he set every offensive record up until that point on Denver. In that offense, he made them relevant. They went to 2 Super Bowls, won 1.
I mean, just an advocacy, a devil's advocate of it. I mean, to be fair, the Super Bowl he won, he didn't do anything to contribute hardly. He was just kind of there. The defense won for him. The other Super Bowl where they were this prolific offense, they got creamed by Seattle. So, but still, I get what you're saying. He did a lot for the organization.
So, it's funny you say that the thing about Peyton, his career is too short, because my next one is another Denver Broncos whose career was short, which is Terrell Davis. I'm surprised Terrell Davis' number is not retired as one of the early 2000s best running backs.
I agree. I mean, I understand. Again, I think Terrell Davis is a guy I would retire, actually, over Peyton, because I think he is more synonymous with Denver than I think Peyton Manning is. And maybe that's just me. I remember Peyton more for the Colts years than I do the Bronco years. So, but Terrell Davis, I think, is a guy you would. Because, again, the 2,000-yard year, integral in getting the Super Bowl for them. I think a cornerstone. Really, actually, a guy that probably would have played longer if not having for, migraine issues and stuff. But Terrell Davis would be a guy I'd slide in there, retire 3-0.
So, my last one is Champ Bailey. Champ Bailey's number has not been retired, who is maybe the best cornerback of the 2000s, early 2000s.
Yeah, I think Champ Bailey. I remember every time. I think Champ Bailey is one of the OG shutdown corners of the NFL. I think he's one of those top guys up there. And again, I always remember him donning the blue and orange for the Broncos. I think he's a guy that would make a lot of sense to go ahead and retire at 24. So yeah, I think it's another good one.
Yeah, so those were my couple. I threw out D'Angelo Hall as maybe an idea. Another one I thought about, which I don't think is as likely, is like Troy Polamalu on Pittsburgh.
I think that could happen. I think it would. I mean, I'm sure Pittsburgh will retire 7 for Ben, but I think I'm actually Polamalu 43. Come. I mean, again, I don't know if I've seen. I think someone actually has 143 since he's been done, but
I'm not sure.
That'd be a good one.
But so moving on to our last story of this episode. Is we are moving on to this NIL controversy over in college football. So over the last couple days, we've had Jimbo Fischer just firing shots at Nick Saban after Nick Saban had thrown out the original punch. So for those that haven't been paying attention, Nick Saban got onto his mic and just called out Texas A&M for buying all of their recruits, essentially. And so Jimbo Fischer did not like that at all, and then decided to fire back at Nick Saban and basically say that he does the same thing. And so this has been this huge controversy brewing between these two juggernauts, and then getting into the middle of it is Ole Miss Lane Kiffin. So Lane Kiffin, the other day, decides to hop onto the mic and basically talk about how he treats his team like a pro sport, and that these are pro players. So, Clark, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, again, we've talked about this on our own beforehand, but it's, again, with Lane Kiffin bringing it up today, I think it just kind of puts it back into the spotlight. But I'm with Lane and Jimbo Fischer, more with Lane Kiffin than anything else, is that, I mean, look, if Nick Saban's trying to sit here and say, like, oh, they're buying the players, like, we don't do that at Alabama, that's a lie. Like, am I supposed to just pretend that that's true, that Alabama isn't, like, also using NIL to its advantage? No. I mean, what kind of ridiculous idea is that? And I don't know if Saban's saying it because he's jealous that they didn't have the number 1 recruit class in the country for some reason. But I don't understand where the sentiment comes from. And, again, going back to Kiffin's comment, I mean, he's right. For all intents and purposes, I mean, college players are on the biggest stage in those Power 5 conferences, on a biggest stage you could ask for. They get ratings that rival just up there with the NFL. People pay to watch these kids, and they're just treated like superstars, and they are rightfully now getting a financial benefactor of it that they should have been receiving for a while. And I think this whole idea that people are like, oh, the NIL is ruining college sports, how could they possibly do this, is like the most old head argument of all time. These guys that, they're going here to these schools, the amount of cash they bring in for their respective universities is absurd. Like, it's crazy. The revenue brought in from Alabama football and, these SEC schools and other Big Five probably pay for a lot, if not most, of the other athletic programs. I mean, I know there's rumors they operate at loss, but the ultimate reality is that I think NIL for these players is good. They should be able to monetize off themselves. They should be able to make money. And just for like Nick Saban to be like, "Oh, we at Alabama think that's ridiculous, and what a preposterous idea that we would do that, and we're getting beat by NIL, and it's yada yada yada." It's stupid. So I think Jimbo and Lane are on the right. I don't know what Saban's talking about.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think NIL has every right to be in college football. I think these players are treated like professionals, and they get marketed like professionals. I mean, look at the way that they marketed Joe Burrow when he was on LSU. Look at any of this. I mean, look at how they just trotted out Bryce Young last year. Look at the way they treated Bryce Young. I mean, I get CJ Stroud is another one. They treat these guys like they're already in the league, that they're already NFL players. And for these coaches to get up there and been like, no. That would be awful for these players to get paid, and that would be awful that they're going to different schools that are Alabama and Clemson.
I'm sure Saban's just fuming that the number one recruit went to Jackson State to play with Deion Sanders, but it's like, okay, he gets to play for Deion Sanders, and he probably got a, I don't know what the deal was in the NIL, but I'm sure he got a fat check, but good for him. Why shouldn't he?
He got $3.2 million.
Why shouldn't he? If he went to Alabama and, played for them, they'll do what they always... I mean, for the longest time, for the longest time, had a Vince Young UT jersey. But instead of Young on the back, it just said Texas. So they would just poach the money off of him because they would get the jersey sale. So, good for him. If he wants to go make $3.2 million and, he's not playing in a Division I, powerhouse, so be it for him. He's getting his money. He's getting his due for what he is. And he's a great player. So why should he worry about it?
Well... The other thing people always talk about is if it weren't for NIL, this guy wouldn't have went to Jackson State and he could have went to Alabama and then he would have made the NFL. But there's no guarantee he's going to make the NFL even if he goes to Alabama. He might fall down the depth chart. He might get injured. But in this case, he just secured himself a check of $3.2 million that could have him set into his early 30s, if not even later than that, depending on the lifestyle he's living.
Exactly. It's
ridiculous.
Exactly. That's the thing too. How could you ever possibly blame someone for doing that? At 18 years old, if someone handed you and said, "Hey, if you don't go play at a Power 5 and you go play at Jacksonville State for Deion Sanders, we'll give you $3.2 million," are they supposed to turn down financial security if they play it right for themselves and probably somewhat for their kids too? Why would they say no to that? In what world does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think a part of it also is Nick Saban's probably a little butthurt that it feels like now college football is getting a little bit more parity. USC is back in the mix. Jackson State is getting big recruits. Big recruits are going to different places. They're not just going to Alabama. They're not just going to Clemson. They're not just going to Ohio State. They're actually spreading out. I mean, Texas A&M is getting recruits again.
It's my thing, too, is that I'm like, I think you're right in the whole parity thing. I mean, he's probably upset that it's not just as much of a cakewalk for him to get these number one recruits classes every year. He's not getting the top guy at every position because the reality is with NIL, other teams are more willing to be like, yeah, we'll hook it up with something for sure. And if he's stuck in the idea of we're just going to lean on the fact that we produce NFL guys every year. Well, the reality of the situation is for these guys, if they can take that NIL money, maybe they can take, 3 years and 4 years and be like, well, the NFL's not what I want to do, and I've already made this substantial amount of money. I can go look at some other endeavor that I want. Then they can go ahead and do that. But, yeah, I think it definitely brings some sort of more balance to the college football spectrum and that there's more option for guys to go to.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be better for the sport in the long run. I think there'll be a lot of old heads who have a lot of issues with this. I mean, we had Kurt Herbstreit get up there during bowl season last year.
They don't care about football. They don't care about it. Shut up! It's because you have them playing in the Beef O'Brady's Bowl. Who cares? If I'm going to be a top pick or get drafted, why am I going to go play in freaking the Great Idaho Potato Bowl in front of 2,000 people? Why would I ever care about that? It's not that they don't care anymore. It's
it's dumb. Even NFL GMs, Tom Telesco stood up on the stand and said, "Yeah, we don't even put bowl games in that much of our scouting unless if they're playing in playoff games. They just don't care. NFL teams do not care. They watch the tape, and see if there's anything good there. But it's just another game.
I mean, unless you've had some sort of disastrous season, your stock has fallen immensely, and this is somehow you think is going to make up for it all in one game. Then go ahead and play it. But truth be told, if I'm an NFL prospect and I know I have a chance, I'm in college, unless I'm playing like maybe in the college football playoff, screw a bowl game. It's just an opportunity to get hurt. No.
I mean, yeah, look at Matt Corral this year. Matt Corral played in a bowl game and got hurt. I mean, it could have been a lot worse for him. He at least is going to be able. Yeah, he at least got drafted. If he had tore his ACL, it might have even been a different
what was it
story.
a couple years ago? I forget which game it was, but the tight end for Michigan, Jake Butt, he was supposed to be like a first-round pick, and I think he blew out his knee, and he ended up dropping to the 5th round. I mean, fortunately, I think he had like an insurance policy on the knee and cashed out on it, which is smart. But that's like, okay, he just dropped 4 rounds because he got hurt in the last game of the season that didn't count for anything except for school and personal pride, which is fine to play for, but if you're looking to make a career out of this, it's no use to playing it.
It's also destroyed
Jake
his
Butt's
NFL
never done
career.
anything.
I mean, he hasn't turned into
which is a shame
anything.
for him, but yeah, that probably definitely trickled down to whatever ended up happening with him. So, yeah, just for NIL, I think for all intents and purposes, I don't know why people have such an issue with it. I don't know why there's such pushback of these college players making money off their likeness, off themselves, off the popularity that they drive, not only to them personally, but to the school itself. They should absolutely get a cut for what they're doing. I mean, I don't see the problem with it whatsoever.
No, I don't see any problem. For me, it'll just make college football better. And, I mean, obviously we live on the West Coast, but hopefully it'll mean the Pac-12 gets back to getting better. Hopefully Oregon, USC, Utah are all able to get some of these recruits.
Well, just like
and bring back
another
Pac-12
thing, I think,
football.
just the last thing on the nail that I think is a little bit rich, is that people have such a big issue, but like, let's not pretend that beforehand these players were not getting paid. The big ones, at least, something under the table. Like, we're lying to yourself if you think that.
Yeah.
Because that's preposterous.
You're lying if you thought Trevor Lawrence was just going scot-free.
I mean,
at
come
Clemson.
on. Like, really? No. Or, like, other guys, I'm trying to think of, like, a good example of, like, recent history that would have been pre-NIL. Andrew Luck. Well, maybe Andrew Luck, just because he seems like that guy. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, he's a really smart guy, but when you're just a prospect of that magnitude, like number one generational prospect, for the team just to have you on their team takes
exactly.
a lot.
So,
especially now, it's going to get even worse with the transfer portal. Now these big quarterbacks can just move wherever they want.
I think that's good. I thought it was stupid before he had to sit out a year, basically, if you wanted to transfer somewhere. So,
yeah. No, I totally agree. I think this is a much better system.
And again, good for...
I mean, Oklahoma fans are mad because C.J. Williams left, but
Oklahoma.
serves them right.
Oklahoma. Then they went...
Yeah. I mean, it really... I just like all the Oklahoma fans trying to act like, oh, it wasn't Lincoln Riley. Like, Oklahoma's just a good school. It wasn't Lincoln Riley.
Everyone
and then every player left.
USC with Lincoln Riley, who he recruited. I wonder why that happened. So...
Oh, man, that's crazy. I wonder if players think the same thing.
Oh, my God,
you're
telling me he left to go follow the coach that recruited him, staying with someone who, like, will bring his own recruiting class in? That's wild. Why would that ever happen? Oklahoma's so cool. Have you been here? It's so much fun.
Well, especially because Oklahoma is switching to the SEC and is about to get
Oklahoma,
crushed.
I'm going to laugh every single time it happens. Oklahoma football is going to get smacked in the SEC. And I think Texas will too. But that's what they deserve. So stupid.
I think both are.
So stupid.
It's dumb.
But they reap what they sow. And I thought it was hilarious that as soon as Lane Kiffin left, that all of his players left. And Oklahoma was like, what are we going to do now?
Then their fans just went on a big diatribe about how Lincoln Riley really isn't that good, and he didn't develop Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield.
No reason that they've had 2 former first overall picks. It has nothing to do with Lincoln Riley, that's for sure.
No, and Jalen Hurts is also another starter in the league.
Lincoln Riley, bad head coach. Never forget that.
Yeah, nothing. He's not a
poverty head coach. Poverty head coach.
I'd rather have
please,
anyone else.
I'd rather have, hey, bring me back Chip Kelly. Give me Chip Kelly over Lane Kiffin, that bum.
Seriously, give me
give me
Bill
Hugh Jackson.
O'Brien.
Bring Hugh Jackson back to college if he was ever here. Get him in.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, this has been our show. Thanks for listening. If you stayed all the way till the end, I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, you can follow us on TikTok. You can follow us on Twitter. Those are our main social medias right now. I just put a link tree in our on our TikTok bio, which if you're looking for any of our links, you're welcome to look there. that is the best place to reach us. You're free to DM us. You're free. We're really trying to build up these platforms, really trying to interact with you guys. So I hope you're listening. I hope you're enjoying.
Make sure if you see us, if you see us post anywhere on that, feel free to shit on any of our texts. I'm always glad to defend and say something back and retort. My favorite thing, actually.
For sure, yeah. So please reach out to us and have a great rest of your day.